Let's take our first look at the Ableton user interface and see where things are located. If you want to follow along, I've got the AL12 project file open. And I'll start by mentioning that there are two different workflows in Ableton. There's session view and there's arrangement view. I can switch between these two views using these buttons in the upper right-hand corner of the interface. The one on the far right, that's the horizontal lines. If I click that, that will take me to arrangement view. And if I go just to the left of that and click the one that looks like 4 vertical lines, that will take me back to session view. Now, as I did that, you might have noticed that kind of everything around the outside edges stayed the same. So across the top, we have the drop-down menus, and then below that we have the control bar. And on the control bar, we'll see things like the tempo setting and the meter, the metronome on-off button. As we move to the middle, we've got transport controls like play, stop, and arrangement record, session record button. Then just to the right of that, we have the punch switches as well as the loop switch. And then over on the right, we have buttons that activate key and MIDI mapping, which allow us to map keys on our computer keyboard or knobs and other buttons on a MIDI controller to control parameters in devices in Ableton Live. On the far right, we have some information about the performance of Ableton Live. Like, for example, currently there's 4% CPU usage. Now, just below that, we have the help view in Ableton. Now, if that's not open on your computer, you can go over to the view menu and you can click on help view to open it. Now, in help view, you'll find lessons on different aspects of Live, and it's very, very useful. Now, I mostly work with this closed because I want the screen real estate available to me to be able to see more things on my tracks. So I'll click the X button up here at the top to close that. Now, if we go down to the bottom, there are several different things that we can see here. Now, currently, I've got a clip selected on the drum track, and I'm seeing the MIDI editor view. But if I was to go over to, say, the piano track and click a clip there, you'll see that it automatically shows me the kind of content on that track, which is audio, and so I've got the sample editor visible. Now, additionally, let's go back to the drum track, I can close the MIDI editor by clicking this little toggle switch down here at the bottom. And then if I move over to the right, I can click on the toggle switch next to where it says drums, and that shows me device view. And this shows me all of the plugins. And if I scroll with my mouse here, I can see all the different plugins that are on that track. If I want both of those open, I can have them both open at the same time by clicking the toggle switches for both of those. Now, on the far right, I can show and hide the mixer controls. Let me close down one of those other views so that we can see all of the areas of the mixer. And when I click on that button, you'll see a bunch of stuff disappear. Those are all part of the Ableton mixer. As I go to the far left, in the lower left-hand corner, I'll find Info View, and this is really useful. If there's something in Ableton that you don't understand, you can just point your mouse at it and it will tell you what it is. For example, if I go over here and point at the loop switch, it tells us turn on the loop switch to play the selected region of a clip or envelope in a loop. If I disable that, that clip will only play once and then it will stop. But if I enable it, that clip will loop once it gets to the end. And if I go up into the mixer and point, let's say, at one of these triangles, it'll tell me that that's the track volume adjuster, or it's the fader on the track. So as I click and drag that up and down, I can change the volume on that track. Now, above the info view, we have the browser. And in the browser, you can look and find your instrument plugins, your audio effects, MIDI effects. And by the way, these are all Ableton devices. If I go down to plugins, that's where you'll find all of your third-party devices. So if you've got universal audio plugins or Fab Filter plugins, this is where you'll be able to find them and then load them onto a track. Below that, we have access to MIDI and audio content in the clips area and in the samples area. All right, Let's talk a little bit about Session View. So Session View was very unique when Ableton first came out. It's a nonlinear way of working with your content, and it's great for live performance when you want to trigger different song sections. Now in different DAWs like Logic, we're starting to see something similar pop up there. In Session View, we have tracks as we go across from left to right. And on these tracks, what might have looked like areas where you could add plugins, these are actual clip slots where I can put bits of audio and MIDI. So for example, if I wanted to play this first clip, I can play that by clicking on the play button. Now, if I want to stop that clip from playing, I can click one of the stop buttons that's on the track, like down here just above the mixer, or I can click the stop button up here in the transport controls. Notice that when I do that, the play button still is lit on that clip, and that means that that clip is in focus, and if I hit my space bar, any clips that are in focus will play. I can hit my space bar to stop playback. Now, as you begin to work out the different sections of a song, you'll want to put all of those clips on the same row. And if I go over to the far right on the main track here, what looks like more clips are actual controls for playing scenes. And scenes are a collection of clips on the same row. So if I want to launch that scene and all of these clips, I can click the play button on that scene. Okay, now if I want to go from one section of the song to another, I can just click the play button on the next scene. But it's a little bit more complicated in that we have what's called the global quantization setting. That's where it says 1 bar here. And that controls how different clips and scenes launch in Session View. So for example, the way it's set right now, if I were to click another clip on the drum track while this first clip is playing, it would wait until the beginning of the next bar to launch that clip. And similarly, if I've got this verse scene playing and I want to launch the pre-chorus, it's going to wait until the next bar before it launches that. So I'll play 4 bars of the verse and then I'll launch the pre-chorus. So I'll wait until the beginning of the 4th bar and then click the launch button on the pre-chorus. Here we go. Bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, and I'll click. And I'll press my space bar to stop playback. So you'll notice that when the pre-chorus section launched, it was right in time. And that's why I use this global quantization set at 1 bar. And that's the default setting. There are other things that you can do, but that's the one that I find the most useful. All right, let's click the Arrange View button over here on the far right, and let's talk a little bit about Arrangement View. Now, when I first come here, you'll notice that it looks like my content is grayed out. And that's because Ableton thinks that I'm working in Session View currently. So if I click this little orange button here, that's called the Back to Arrangement button, that kind of film over the content disappears. And if I click Play Now, it's going to play the content that is in Arrangement View. In saying that, I should mention that I can have 2 versions of this project, one in Session View and one in Arrangement View, and they can be very different. They don't have to be the same. They can be totally independent of each other. The only thing that is the same with both Session View and Arrangement View is I have the same tracks, I have the same plugins on the tracks, and I have the same mix settings overall. But Arrange View is different in that I'm working in a more conventional, linear way, where I've got bar 1 over here, or the beginning of the song on the left, and as the cursor moves to the right, I'm getting later in the material or later in the project. some of the things are exactly the same. We've got the drop-down menus, we've got the control bar, we've got the browser, we've got info view, and across the bottom, again, I've got switches to toggle open clip view or device view. And then new to Live 12 down in the lower right-hand corner, I've also got a button to show or hide the mixer. We could never see the mixer in arrange view in versions before Ableton Live 12. And so if I click that, the mixer goes away. But it's really, really handy to have the mixer available when you're working in arrangement view, so I don't have to go over to session view to make changes in the mix. And typically when I'm working in this view, I'll close down almost all of the other aspects. So for example, I'll click this button to close the browser, and I'll leave the other things like device view and the MIDI editor or sample editor closed so that I can basically just work with the arrangement until I'm ready to work with those other areas of the window. Now, one thing that's very different in Ableton 12, actually all versions of Ableton Live, is that instead of having the track controls on the left side where they're normally located, they're on the right side in Ableton. So if I click to open up the track so I can see more detail, and I can drag down if I want to make it even taller, I can now see the track activator button, the solo button, the record button, the pan setting, and the volume setting on the track, as well as the sends over here. And we can control the different things that we see here through the view menu. And if we drop down to arrangement track controls, you can click to show and hide those aspects that you want to see. Now, if you want to play in this window, if you want to play back the project, you can click somewhere in the arrangement and then click your play button or hit your space bar to start playback. Okay. So we'll dig deeper into both session and arrangement views in this course, but we'll start with the browser in the next group of videos.